Hello and welcome to a new series. I want a little bit of a test drive, or just maybe test philosophy abridged. And today I've just got a real classic for us. Some of us may have heard of him, but if you have, forget everything you may have heard. It's probably true. Jeremy Bentham. Jeremy Bentham. Bentham and the Critique of the Doctrine of Inalienable Natural Rights. This one's from like 1843, so, you know, long time ago. So first I want to mention just this little bit of a background, not a tangent, just a background. What he's critiquing. The French had this idea in, I'm going to give you the year, but this last year I want to mention, 1791, that they should make like something like the American Bill of Rights, kind of similar, way preceding it. But so they got stuff like, men are born and remain free and equal in rights, and someone is innocent until declared culpable, like innocent until proven guilty, kind of thing. No one may be disturbed for his opinion, even religious ones, providing that their manifestation does not trouble the public order established by the law. So, you know, like, people have a right to their own opinion. Stuff that you might think is kind of reasonable. Bentham is here to set you straight. No more shall you be confused by the apparent reasonability of such rights. Natural rights, they call them. The rights that, you know, people have just by the nature of being people. No, none of that. So he starts off by telling us that we have to be careful with what we say. You know, Bentham says if something is too overstated, it becomes false, and he is very careful to heed his own warning here. Let me tell you. So, and, you know, the foreshadowing is that he thinks that maybe the natural rights are a little bit overstated. Bentham, you might know, was a utilitarian. He's maybe the original utilitarian, someone who thinks that, you know, the right thing to do is always just what creates the most good, divided, or just really most good. Per person isn't really the not a criterion. He talks about the enemies of public peace are the selfish and dissocial passions, but we're gonna skip over that. But he sets up that this manifesto, the articles of the Declaration of Natural Rights, are celebrated, rendered famous. But then he pulls a twister on us. He starts this next paragraph here, and I'm going to have to read this one directly. This one's critical. The logic of it, of the article, of the thing he's critiquing, is of a piece with its morality. It's as logical as it is moral. Both are, he says, a perpetual vein of nonsense, flowing from a perpetual abuse of words. So here he's got two critiques. One is the content. He thinks that, you know, it's all pretty unkosher. Doesn't like it. The second critique is linguistic. He says, and this is exactly the next line, words having a variety of meanings, where words with a single meaning were equally at hand. Here he is. He's catching them. He's outing them. He's busting them. They chose words that are potentially ambiguous, when they had words that were very clear, available, and chose not to use them. This is unforgivable, and it's really a lesson that we should all take in our writing. He says, the same words used in a variety of meanings in the same page. Words used in meanings not their own, where proper words were equally at hand. Once again, he repeats that, equally at hand, letting us know that they had options, and they chose not to use them. So that's his, I'm not going to get too much into the rest of what he calls frippery ornament critique. The other critique is about the content. He says here, again, I don't want to make it sound like I'm putting words in his mouth, making him sound more extreme than he is, so I'm going to let you know this one is verbatim. More confusion, dash dash, more nonsense, comma, dash dash. And the nonsense, as usual, dangerous nonsense. So now he's letting us know that this is not only crazy what they're saying, completely nuts, loony. There's a more, it's dangerous. These articles, like people have right to their own opinion and all that, danger ensues when people are given such natural rights. We pretend that it's natural rights. So now we get to the part where really it's what I think is most beautiful, beautiful writing on his part. He says that a reason for wishing there were such thing as rights might exist. You might want there to be rights, but, you know, where do the rights come from? Wanting them is not enough. You know, hunger, he says, hunger is not bread. Just because you think it would be nice if people had these rights doesn't give them rights. You know, where are these rights? How high are they off the ground? How many meters? How much do they weigh? You know, show me these rights. He says, natural rights is simple nonsense. Natural and imprescriptible rights, rhetorical nonsense. Nonsense upon stilts. I say that with dramatic, because he means it dramatically. Nonsense upon stilts is what these rights are. So he's made his point, and now he lays off. He even says, so much for the terrorist language. He's so much for that, you know. He's done with these terrorist French setting up natural rights. But let's try and figure out now, what does Bentham want us to have instead of rights? If not rights, what does exist? Well, Bentham, he has an answer. He says, what exists is the experience, the good feeling of happiness. Like, you know, when you're getting something tasty, chocolate. Chocolate, he says, is what we have, not rights. We've got happiness. And, you know, how much chocolate do we have? That's how much happiness we have. Or, and other things can count too, maybe not just chocolate. If we only had chocolate, then that would be true, that however much chocolate we have is however much happiness we have. But then, you know, there was a question of how do we measure these? And someone else, Roger Crisp, who's actually responding to Mill, not Bentham, gives a great thought experiment. You know, here in philosophy, we don't leave our armchairs. We don't, you know, the scientists can look outside while they do all their empirical nonsense, but we don't need any of that. We do things a priori, meaning, you know, with our eyes closed and without actually experiencing anything. Pre our experience. So he sets up this thought experiment that's sort of, it wants to push back a little. It wants to, you know, fight back, show these utilitarians that their math doesn't really make sense. And so this is a very famous thought experiment. It's called Haydn Haydn is a famous musician, by the way. And the oyster. Here at Swift, I think we know a little bit about oysters, but we're going to test our knowledge with this thought experiment. So you have to imagine with me here. You have to imagine that you are a soul. What's a soul? Don't ask me, I don't know. But you have to imagine that you are a soul in heaven. I don't know where that is either, but that's the premise here. Let's grant the premise. You are a soul in heaven, waiting to be allocated to a life on earth. What does that mean? That means that you're about to be assigned a body. You're going to live a life. And right now we don't know which life that is. We're going to find out in a second. We're going to have a choice. There's not that many available lives to choose from. You have to choose someone. And the angel in charge, let's call him Angelo. Angelo says that you've got two options here. We've got composer Joseph Haydn. You could live as Joseph Haydn. He's, he composes music. He gets sort of famous. He falls in love. I assume, it doesn't say that, but I assume. He gets success, and not just success, but honor. H-O-N-O-U-R. English honor. Amazing honor. The best honor. The most honorable honor. He lives until 77. But then he dies. So you get to live the wonderful, chocolatey, happy life of Joseph Haydn for 77 years. Or, I promised you another option. Angelo promised you another option. You can be an oyster. Oysters are happy. This is going to be you're going to be a sophisticated oyster, relatively. But your life is going to consist of only, it says, mild sensual pleasure. Like, you get to float in a nice warm bath. You get to feel, it feels maybe like you're a little bit drunk. Who knows what you're floating in. Maybe there's a nice scallop with wonderful ridges nearby. You can enjoy the view. But, it's not as exciting a life as Joseph Haydn. So, obviously, well, maybe not obvious, maybe I'll let you choose for yourself, but at this point, I have to admit, I'm leaning towards picking Haydn. So Angelo hears that. He's like, okay, you know what, you're right. Haydn, it seems like a better product. I can't fault you there. So let me try and sweeten the deal for you on the oyster. I gotta get rid of this oyster life. I gotta sell. Haydn's gonna die at 77, remember? But the oyster life can be as long as you like. Whoa. Let's hold up here. What did Bentham tell us to do? Choose the most pleasure. He didn't say most intense pleasure, he meant most total pleasure. Absolute total pleasure. Joseph Haydn here, Joey might have a really, I think his name is Joey. He doesn't say that, but we're going to call him Joey. Joey's going to have a really good life. It's going to be awesome. But it's finite. You have 77 awesome years, but after that, you add those together, you're done. No more. Put the calculators down. The oyster, it's positive. It's non-zero. It's a number. How much happiness you have. Assuming we can put a number on it for a second, which we have to assume because Bentham thinks you can. It goes on as long as we'd like. So, infinite. It goes on forever. Now, I confess I didn't always do my math homework, but one thing I did pay attention to was that infinity is, it's the bigger one. It's more than finite numbers, like 77 years times, 300 chocolate bars a day. That's a lot of chocolate, but that is not an infinite amount of chocolate. Even if you're only getting a tiny bit, like one little nibble of chocolate a day is an oyster. One little tiny nibble of happiness as an oyster per day. That times infinity? Well, we know what the bigger number is. So, what would you choose? If you choose Haydn, living it fast and loose, not caring about the sum total, it sounds like maybe you don't agree with utilitarianism, or at least this branch of it. You don't think it's right to add up all the happiness and see what more is, which number's more. Yeah, what more is. You are happier choosing something with less total happiness? That seems absurd. I don't understand that. So maybe you'd have to switch off utility. You'd have to find a different conception of happiness. Maybe, yeah. If you like the oyster, if you're a happy little oyster, and that sounds like a good life to you. Well, you and Bentham may get along yet. Thank you for listening to this first episode of Ziv Does Philosophy. My name is Ziv. I don't think I mentioned that up front. Yeah, I probably won't do more episodes, but who knows? Thanks, and